وكفى والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على سيد الرسل وخاتم الأنبياء وعلى آله الأزكياء وأصحابه الأتقياء أما بعد. In our previous classes we were discussing the different engagements that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had with the companions as the total package of education, teaching how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was effective with the students that he taught. So today we enter into a new chapter, Su'aluhu sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ashabahum, that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ashabahu, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam questioning his companions. Why? لِيَكْشِفَ ذُكَاءَهُم. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam can examine their intelligence and ma'rifatahum, how well they understood a particular matter. Yes, go ahead.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in.
This is kind of like the quiz part, where Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would quiz them to see whether they understood something, whether they had connected the dots or not, whether they had grown where the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam desired to see them grow. So there was a quiz element to this. This is what the chapter is about. Yes?
قال المؤلف رحمه الله, posing questions to gauge a person's intellect and knowledge. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam used to question his Sahaba radiallahu anhum regarding particular matters despite his knowing the answer. He used to question them to stimulate their intelligence and arouse their minds, and would impart knowledge to them in the form of a deliberation in order to gauge the knowledge they possessed. Bukhari and Muslim narrate on the authority of Abdul ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, who said, "We were sitting in the company of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when a palm core was brought to him. While eating it, he said,
the palm core was very much beloved to the Arabs. They would eat it with joy, specifically with honey. They would mix it with honey and eat it. So there was a special taste to it that they enjoyed. So as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was eating this, he then asked a question. Go ahead.
While eating it, he said, "From among the many trees there is a green tree whose goodness and benefits are like those of a Muslim. Its leaves do not fall, nor do they scatter about. It produces its fruit at its appointed time by the permission of the sustainer. It is similar to a Muslim. Tell me, what tree is that?"
Yes, so here the Prophet ﷺ questions them regarding a particular tree. He's eating from a tree and from this core of the palm tree, and he decides to question them regarding a tree that is full of barakah. Its leaves do not scatter and fall everywhere. It is usually quite punctual in delivering its fruit. The harvest is quite consistent. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam asked the companions, "Which tree is it? Tell me." Go ahead.
There are several reasons for the comparison between the date palm and a Muslim. It is regarded as the best and highest of trees in rank. There is abundant goodness in it. It provides shade all the time. It produces wholesome fruit. Its fruit is perennial. From the time it bears fruit, these are eaten in different forms until new dates appear, which are then harvested.
The Arabs would have dates. As soon as the date appeared on the tree, even in its earliest phase of existence, they would begin eating it. There were dates that they preferred that were still somewhat dry. They preferred dates that were, very firm. They liked dates that were now soft and sweet. They liked the dates that are now at the end of the season, dried, that were left up behind there. So depending on, regardless of where it was in the season, as long as the date existed, they were eating it in some form or another.
When the date palm dries, it provides numerous benefits. Its wood, leaves, and branches are used for stumps, firewood, staffs, batons, ropes, utensils, etc. Even its date pits are used as fodder for camels. As for its beautiful growth and leaves, beautiful shape and fruit, its lofty and soaring height, its evergreen leaves, its firm roots which prevents the wind and storm from uprooting it, and its generous shadow and shade, these are the obvious benefits and the many well-known and praiseworthy advantages for those living in the Arabian Peninsula. Allah Ta'ala praised this tree greatly in several verses of the Quran. Similarly, a Muslim or a believer is an embodiment of goodness and benefit. His blessings encompass all situations. His benefits are perpetual in his favor and in favor of others after his death. He does good deeds, speaks good, engages in various types of obedience by the way of fasting, performing salah, reciting the Quran, remembering Allah Ta'ala, reprimanding others of Allah Ta'ala, giving in charity, commanding good and prohibiting evil. He intermingles with people, he exercises patience over their transgressions against him, he is loving and attracts people towards him, he benefits people without causing them any harm, he is beautiful in his conduct and speech, his noble characteristics are of benefit to others, he gives and does not refuse, he gives preference to others and is not covetous, and the passage of days only increases him in his aloofness and detachment from this world. Hardships and afflictions only serve to make him more firm and steadfast on the truth. He hastens towards goodness and beneficial ventures and eradicates ignoble and reprehensible traits. His deeds are accepted and liked by his sustainer. If you sit in his company, he will benefit you. If you partner with him, he will benefit you. If you accompany him, he will benefit you. If you ask his advice, he will benefit you. There is benefit in every facet of his affairs, whatever knowledge emanates from him is a source of nourishment for his souls and hearts. He is enshrouded and encompassed by his Islam. He is never devoid of the clothing of piety. His good deeds do not stop whether he is in a state of affluence or poverty, health or illness. In fact, his good deeds do not even end after his death. He views his life for the benefit of his hereafter. He seeks benefit from today for tomorrow. Benefit is derived from everything that emanates from him, whether he is alive or dead. The reason for this is that the basis of all his deeds and actions is belief in Allah Ta'ala and benefiting the servants of Allah Ta'ala. Glory be to Allah, how great a believer is.
So here you see the comparison between the tree and the believer. The khulasa of the matter is that the palm tree is not only beautiful outwardly and nutritious inwardly, but it's very generous with what it has to offer. And that is the case of a true believer. As the author, he says, وَمَا يَصْدُرُ عَنْهُ مِنَ الْعُلُومِ فَهُوَ قُوتٌ لِلْأَرْوَاحِ وَالْقُلُوبِ. That whatever knowledge emerges from this human being, it is nourishment للأرواح والقلوب, for the souls and for the heart. ولا يزال مستورا بدينه ولا يعرى من التقوى ولا ينقطع عمله في غنى أو فقر ولا في صحة أو مرض. That his good deeds never stop. Right? The tree doesn't just disappear when it's raining, or if it's sunny, or if it's windy outside, or if it's snow. It's committed. Its roots are deep, so it's here to stay. And that is the case of the believer, that the believer doesn't run away when things get tough or rough. The believer isn't shy when challenged. The believer stands firm and strong. That I'm not leaving or going anywhere. Right? And the khayr and barakah of the believer is continuous. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from believers who fit this description, who not only are a source of khayr, like the tree, in itself, innately, it has khayr in it. It has good in it. So much that you can bring it down piece by piece, and there's something to take. You can do something with the branches, do something with the trunk, do something with the roots, do something with the fruit. Even the bark can be used. Every aspect of the tree can be utilized for khayr. And that should be the state of the believer too. And ask yourself, are you a healthy tree, or are you a tree that's ready to fall because it's empty and rotten from its core? Where are you? Are you a tree whose fruit will cause disease with anyone that touches it or eats it? Are you a tree that puts the one sitting under it at risk and danger? Or are you a healthy tree that's actually there to benefit people? Not all trees are the same, just as not all believers and all human beings are the same. There are those from the human beings that are sources of khayr wherever they go. Their presence inspires people. In their absence, you miss them, you remember them. When they live, there is a bubble of khair that surrounds them, that no matter what corner of the world they go to, people are attracted to them. They find joy and pleasure, upliftment by being close to that person. And then when that person travels, or if they were to pass away, there is an emptiness in the hearts of people. And the question is that you? That if a tree was removed, everyone says, oh, this tree was so beneficial that all the fuqara and the aghniya, everyone ate from here. The poor and the rich ate from this tree. Where did that tree go? There's a tree that doesn't offer much to society. So if it's there or not, nobody notices. But then there is a tree that everyone notices, because the kids remember that when we were young, we used to throw stones at this tree and catch the mango at the bottom and run off. Right? This was that tree. It was a part of our life. People would sit under here. We would tie our horses or bikes or camels to this tree because it was a part of our life. Which one are you? When we look at the Sahaba, Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in, they were surely the people of khair and the source of khair that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam describes the companions to be, described a Muslim to be. When I look at just the example of Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, the fact that after when we say his name, we add as-Siddiq, that shows us that this was a man of legacy. He was a man of legacy. And I ask myself that if I were to pass away, no one would know me by anything, because there's no legacy here. The Prophet ﷺ tells us that when a person dies, mustarihun or mustarahun min. Mustarihun, that's one group of people. Mustarahun min, second group of people. Which one are we? Mustarihun is the one that when he dies, he is relieved of the anguish and pain and worries, concern, grind of this dunya. You know, that day-to-day grind that we have, you wake up and you go to sleep, wake up and go to sleep, exhausting. Mustarihun, when that person dies, istirah, they're in comfort, relaxation, that I don't have to worry about illness anymore. No more doctor's appointment. No more insurance payments. We're all looking forward to that. Oh, mustarahum min. Or the second person is when they die, the people behind them say, now we're relieved. Chutiyaway. That mustarahum min is that people are relieved of that person. That their departure has now brought peace to the dunya. There's now a segment of the world that can live in comfort because that human being no longer exists. Mustarihun or mustarahum min. Which one are we? Go ahead. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam asked about this tree that had barakah. Shaykh Abdul Fattah Ghuddah rahimahullah ta'ala, he listed out some of the commonalities between the insan and this tree that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was indicating towards. But this following part is where the interesting conversation occurs. Go ahead.
Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu says, the people began thinking about the different trees in the forests. Some said it is such and such tree, someone else said it is such and such tree. It occurred to me that it is the date palm. I wanted to say this to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but when I looked at the seniority of the people and my own young age, I became scared to say anything.
This is Adab. He knew the answer. He said, I wanted to say the answer too, but there were senior Sahaba there. And I knew that it was better for me to stay silent and answer than speak. It was better for me to stay silent than to answer in the presence of the seniors, in the gathering of the like of Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhu. This is adab, that you have to know when it's time to speak, and you also need to know when it's time to stay quiet. In the world that we're in, people don't know the difference. They just keep talking, you know. They just keep giving feedback and keep talking and keep shouting and keep raising their voice as if they're standing at Walmart. That, you know, I need milk and I need it right now and you need to go bring it from the back, otherwise I will throw a tantrum and call your superior. That sort of attitude won't work with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You'll get hit really hard. And it could be a cause of becoming mahroom of iman. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could just pull the plug on you and the next thing you know it, iman is gone from your heart. May Allah protect us all. But it is what it is. We have to be honest. One of my teachers used to say, Allah ke yaad der hai, andher nahi. What that means is that sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may give you respite. He may let you go. Allah ke yaad der hai. Let you go. Chalo, you committed something wrong, let him go. Let him go. Der means delay, respite. Allah ke yaad der hai, andher nahi. But don't think that Allah doesn't know what you did just because He's letting you go this time. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأُمْلِي لَهُمْ إِنَّ كَيْدِي مَتِينٌ. وَأُمْلِي لَهُمْ, I give them respite. Jao. Keep sinning. Keep disobeying me. Because jab pakad aayegi, badi sakht hogi. Because when I hold you accountable, then you won't get off. وَأُمْلِي لَهُمْ إِنَّ كَيْدِي مَتِينٌ فَمَهِّلِ الْكَافِرِينَ أَمْهِلْهُمْ رُوَيْدًا. Allah says, أَمْهِلْهُمْ رُوَيْدًا. I'm letting them go. Go do your thing. سَنَسْتَدْرِجُهُمْ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Then they will be held accountable. We'll come and we'll hold them. And where will they run then? There will be no place for you to escape. Because there is no place to escape but to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Sahabi, Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhu, he understood the adab of staying silent. And he didn't say anything. He stayed quiet there. Yes, go ahead.
When I looked at myself, I saw myself merely 10 years old, the youngest and smallest of all who were present. When I looked around me, I saw Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhuma sitting silently, so I also remained silent. When these two, Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhuma, did not speak, the people said, "You tell us what the tree is, O Rasulullah." Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, "It is the date palm." When we stood up from there, I said to my father Umar radiallahu anhu, "O father, I take an oath by Allah, it had occurred to me that it was the date palm." He said, "What prevented you from giving the answer?" I said, "I saw all of you remaining silent. I saw you and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu not speaking, and I am a young boy, so I felt shy and did not want to speak or say anything. This is why I remained silent." Umar radiallahu anhu said, "Had you given the answer, it would have been far more beloved to me than my having such and such thing."
As a father, there was no doubt that he would have joy and pride, right? That alhamdulillah, his son was able to answer the question of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But he didn't rebuke him for staying silent. He said, "Had you spoken, it would have brought me pleasure." Right? But from the other side, from the other perspective, this understanding of Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu was also correct. Therefore, the ulama, they narrate this hadith under the chapter of being respectful to your seniors. Right? That you have waqara and tawqir for the people that are older than you. That you know when to speak. You have sharaf, you have honor for those that are younger than you too. You know where your place is. If Umar radiallahu anhu's rahmah and his mercy for his child was that had you spoken, it would have made me happy. But Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu's understanding of the situation was that staying silent was the better thing for me to do. This riwayah, and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam engaging with them and asking this question, it's such a deep narration that many of the ulama narrate this hadith. Many of the ulama narrate this exact riwayah. As the author mentioned at the beginning, that this riwayah was narrated by Bukhari and Muslim. Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi narrates this hadith 11 times in his Sahih. How many times? 11 times. And this is the beauty of Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi's collection, that he narrates one hadith repeatedly. And the reason why he does this is to show how one narration can be looked at from different angles, and there are different rulings that will present themselves. You look at one narration from this angle, it'll tell you something. You turn a little to one corner and look at it from another angle, it tells another story. You look at it from this angle, it tells another story. And for those of you who have studied Sahih al-Bukhari formally with the teacher will know that the main focus or goal of Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi in writing the Sahih is istinbat al-masail, right? Pointing out what the ilal are in masail and how to deduce rulings from the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So therefore you'll find Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi, he narrates one hadith multiple times, the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha with Barira radiallahu anha. Again, for those of you who have read hadith will know that Barira radiallahu anha was the freed slave of Umm-ul-Mu'mineen Aisha radiallahu anha. So there is a famous narration that she narrates that Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi narrates 22 times. That one hadith he brings how many times? 22 times, the hadith of Barira radiallahu anha. It's one of the most important narrations. An argument can be made that modern day finance that we have is actually even possible because of her narration. Do you guys understand this? That you know how we transact with money? Forget about even borrowing money, financing like that. I'm just talking about the functioning of the economy. In its essence, it could be argued that it's based off of the riwayah of Barira radiallahu anha. You guys know the narration? Where she came and the Prophet ﷺ came home and there was some food cooking and he said to her, "What's for food?" So then she saw that they were cooking some meat there. When he asked for food, they gave him something simple. Like imagine someone comes home and they see biryani cooking, and when they ask for food, they serve them dal chawal. Right? So you're wondering, man, there was steak on the grill there and you're giving me salad? My food's food? What's this? So then she said that we have some meat, but that was given as sadaqah, and it was given to me as sadaqah, and O Messenger of Allah, you don't eat sadaqah, you don't accept sadaqah, which is a true statement. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam then said the profound statement, Laki sadaqa wa lana hadiyah. That it's sadaqah for you, but if you choose to share it, it'll be a gift from me. I can eat it then. This becomes the foundation of transactions. This statement of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. You guys understand this? The principle is that as wealth goes from one hand to another, its ruling resets. The hukum of it changes. Someone collected interest from one person over there. He then used that money to buy milk, who then used that money to buy bread, and it's now in your hand in the form of rent for a car. That money is jaiz for you. Why is that? Because it went through hands. And every time it goes through hands, multiple hands, it now purifies. The ruling kind of resets. It starts from the statement of Barira radiallahu anha, that laki sadaqa wa lana hadiyah. That for you that wealth was one thing, but if you choose to give it to us, if you choose to share it, the ruling will change. It won't be sadaqah any longer. It's not eternally sadaqah. It's not eternally impure. Are you guys following this? Such a profound deduction the fuqaha have made from this riwayah of Barira radiallahu anha. Similarly, the riwayah of Jabir radiallahu anhu, Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi narrates the riwayah of Jabir radiallahu anhu. If you're wondering which one this is the riwayah when they were returning from a battle and his camel was very slow. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam then purchased the camel from him and ended up giving it back to him too. Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi narrates that riwayah of Jabir radiallahu anhu over 20 times. How many? Over 20. The riwayah of Aisha radiallahu anha, that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam purchased some food from a Jewish person and then left his armor as collateral. Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi narrates this hadith 11 times. That same riwayah again and again. And then this last one I told you, I already mentioned that the riwayah we just read. Like this, Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi narrates one hadith multiple times to show us how when you look at a narration from different angles, there are different lessons that we can learn from them. And this is the genius of the ulama of the past, how intelligent they were. Shaykh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghuddah rahimahullah ta'ala, at the end of this narration, he lists out some fawaid. Does he have them listed there? The 8 fawaid? He has 8. Okay, you can read them. Go ahead.
I will now make reference to the main lessons which are derived from this noble hadith. It is meritorious for an alim to pose a question to his companions in order to test their understanding and to urge them to think and ponder. He should also explain the answer to them if they are unable to understand it.
That's important. You can't just pose a question and leave. If they don't understand, then you have to explain it. So he says that مَعَ بَيَانِهِ لَهُمْ مَا خَفِيَ عَلَيْهِمْ إِن لَمْ يَفْهَمُوهُ. That now it's the job of the scholar to explain it as well, that you didn't know the answer to this. Well, this is the answer. And this is why this is the answer. Yes?
Students should be encouraged to understand knowledge.
Understanding knowledge. Don't just read. Don't just listen. A teacher will hold the student by the hand and not just show them the room, but walk them around the room. Show them how everything works. Make them familiar with every corner. So now that student, if they need to come back to that room later on alone, they feel very happy and confident that I know where I am. Right? So this is a sort of environment that needs to be created of discussion, mudhakara, munaqasha, mubahatha. You're conversing and learning, and the teacher is, explaining things thoroughly. Yes.
Examples and similarities should be presented for additional understanding to illustrate a point so that it may be firmly embedded in the mind.
Examples, he says, ضرب الأمثال والأشباه. Right? Examples and parables are very important for explaining issues. So you can take something very complicated and explain it in a simple way by presenting an example or using a story. That through a story we see how this issue demonstrates, and how it's demonstrated, how it makes sense. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for this very reason, uses amthal in the Quran. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses parables. So even things that are complicated and may be difficult for the human being to understand, they now become easy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we recited it in Maghrib Salah today, that وَضَرَبَ لَنَا مَثَلًا وَنَسِيَ خَلْقًا, that a person tried to use a parable to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to negate, to reject resurrection after death. One of the mushrikun of Makkah came to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam with a decayed bone, and he said that you're saying once we become this, we're going to come back to this, pointing at himself, like we are going to reverse from this, and this bone is like basically falling off into dust. That from here we're going to reverse back into this full form human being. وَضَرَبَ لَنَا مَثَلًا وَنَسِيَ خَلْقًا. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, bad example, buddy. This guy's trying to be like Shah Waliullah right here, like super intelligent, smart guy, like busting out all of his usul and all the arguments that he has. But he's trying to explain an argument to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why the language in the ayah is quite phenomenal. وَضَرَبَ لَنَا مَثَلًا. Look at this smart guy. He's trying to give us examples, trying to teach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This guy must have thought really clever of himself. He probably said to his buddies, guys, watch this, I'm going to nail it. I'm going to go give an example to my creator. And his buddies must have told him, yeah, you go, man. And he went there and he's probably giving himself a high five there, patting himself on the back. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses this fool as an example to show us how the kibr of the insan also makes them dumb. How their arrogance makes them silly and foolish. وَضَرَبَ لَنَا مَثَلًا وَنَسِيَ خَلْقًا. Allah says that you're so proud of your example. قَالَ مَنْ يُحْيِي الْعِظَامَ وَهِيَ رَمِيمٌ. But before Allah even quotes his statement or even addresses him, Allah says that what the problem is. The problem is نَسِيَ خَلْقًا. How did this guy make this blunder in analogy? How did he make such engage in such a flawed analogy? How? نَسِيَ خَلْقًا. He wasn't thinking straight. Had he thought about his origins, he would have no problem with understanding resurrection. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us from nothing. Creating something from something is easier. And there's no question about that. قَالَ مَنْ قُلْ يُحْيِيهَا الَّذِي أَنْشَأَهَا أَوَّلَ مَرَّةٍ وَهُوَ بِكُلِّ خَلْقٍ عَلِيمٍ. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla gives an example. الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُم مِّنَ الشَّجَرِ الْأَخْضَرِ نَارًا. There is a wood that you take it, and if you use it, if you kind of rub it against itself, what happens? The fire comes into existence. And you have wood. What does wood have to do with fire? You guys understand? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created it. الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُم مِّنَ الشَّجَرِ الْأَخْضَرِ نَارًا. In our language, we call this chakmaki lakadi, that you take this wood and you hit it like this, and it creates a fire. الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُم مِّنَ الشَّجَرِ الْأَخْضَرِ نَارًا. فَإِذَا أَنْتُم مِّنْهُ تُوقِدُونَ. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes the mind of the human being on a deep reflection. أَوَلَيْسَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ بِقَادِرٍ. The one who created the heavens and the earth. You think that he's going to have a tough time creating you again? Like, really? How dumb are you? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that created this whole nizam of the dunya. Everything is working in harmony. All the species above the ocean, in the ocean, above the ground, in the ground, the one that we know and the ones that we don't know. He created all of that. And this dude right here thinks he nailed it because he's holding a bone and he's saying that, how is Allah going to return us back from this? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, وَتِلْكَ الْأَمْثَالُ نَضْرِبُهَا لِلنَّاسِ وَمَا يَعْقِلُهَا إِلَّا الْعَالِمُونَ لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قَصَصِهِمْ عِبْرَةٌ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. Again and again, Allah Azza wa Jalla tells us that, these stories and these analogies, these examples are for people of intelligence. And once a person is thinking like this, once they're thinking right, once they're able to process these analogies, the world around you becomes a big mithal. The whole world does. The body of the human being becomes a mithal of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's qudra. The streets you see, the sky that you look at becomes a mithal of the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But for that you need intelligence. And a teacher can spark that, by the way, by getting students to reflect. Tell me about this. Think about this. Like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked about the tree. Yes, go ahead.
Please also focus the mind towards the wisdom of any particular occurrence. A comparison between two things does not necessarily mean that they share all qualities and are similar in every way, because an inanimate object cannot be similar or equivalent to a believer.
And look, so this is a good point. I really love this point that he made here. I'm even inclined to elaborate on this point a little bit, but I know that it'll turn into a rant, and I try to avoid those these days. But I want you to understand the point that he's making. If you understand this, maybe there's khayr, and maybe your mind will open up to some of the outcomes of this statement of his. When you're comparing two things, they don't have to be exactly the same. You guys understand that? Sometimes you can draw an analogy between two things, and the analogy is partial in regards to the aspects of those two things that are common. Do you guys understand? So for example, someone can say, this is mean what I'm about to say, but I need you to understand it. This is why people are so, unfortunately, childish. They don't have any intellectual capacity that unless the analogy is 100%, they say, well, it's a faulty analogy. Well, that's not what I'm trying to point. Like, for example, if someone were to say, this person is like a dog. Now, one person can say, well, that's not true. Well, then you can say, well, in some aspects, maybe he is. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, فَمَثَلُهُ كَمَثَلِ الْكَلْبِ. This person is like a donkey. مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ حُمِّلُوا التَّوْرَاةَ ثُمَّ لَمْ يَحْمِلُوهَا كَمَثَلِ الْحِمَارِ يَحْمِلُ أَسْفَارًا. This person is like an animal. أُولَٰئِكَ كَالْأَنْعَامِ بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ. You guys understand? Now, a person would easily say, but that person's not a dog. He doesn't have a tongue sticking out of his mouth. Boom, you're owned. Slow it down. Pythagoras here. Like this guy went like super he's killing it here. Slow down. Well, if Allah Azza wa Jalla is saying that this person is like a dog, well, there's a reason. إِن تَحْمِلَ عَلَيْهِ يَلْهَثْ أَوْ تَتْرُكْهُ يَلْهَثْ. From that perspective, the analogy is sound. This person is like a donkey. It's not min kulli al-wujuh, it's min wajhin. It's not that we're claiming that this person in its entirety is a donkey, but rather Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that from this perspective, this person's a donkey. He's like a donkey carrying a load on his back. As the same example applies to someone who has knowledge and doesn't act upon it. ثُمَّ لَمْ يَحْمِلُوهَا كَمَثَلِ الْحِمَارِ. You guys understand this? So again, this is a more technical issue, but it's something worth noting that when presenting analogies, the tashbih doesn't have to be kamil min kulli al-wujuh, from every angle and aspect. As long as you clarify that in this analogy of mine, when I say the sun and moon are similar, I'm not talking about the origin of the light, I'm talking about from the fact that they both deliver light. That's a fair statement. You guys understand? Now someone says, oh, the sun and the moon are two different because one reflects light, one has light as a result of what's happening on the surface. From that perspective, it's different. But from another perspective, it's the same. Anyway, yes, go ahead, continue.
There is merit in humility as long as it does not cause deficiencies.
You have to understand this. That's the point that I'm telling you. The outcomes of what I just said right now are tremendous. They are tremendous. I've heard people saying this, that, well, what's the point of reading the Quran when the examples of the Quran don't relate to modern times? Well, if you're looking for an example that fits you, a human being that can't get off his phone and is constantly on TikTok and Instagram, then the Quran has nothing to offer to you. If you want that exact same person. But if you want an example of people that suffer from severe ghafla, the Quran has stories. But for that, you're going to have to use your aql. Kids say to their parents that you don't relate to us anymore. Well, in some aspects, if you're talking about foot by foot, inch by inch life experiences, then no one's going to relate to you. because your situation is unique. But if you're intelligent and are willing to listen, you might notice that your parents, your grandparents, the elders in the community, even the young ones, may have wisdom to share, that if you use your creativity to bridge the gap between where they are and where you are, you will find a great lesson for you to connect and bond with. But that requires intelligence, a lot of creativity, as I mentioned. You have to think about it. Go ahead, let's finish this off.
There is merit in humility as long as it does not cause deficiencies. For this reason, Umar radiallahu anhu wished that his son had not remained silent. Elders should be respected, and a young person should allow his father to speak first. In fact, a young person should not speak before his father has spoken, even if he thinks that his understanding is correct. At times, a senior alim may not understand something.
You're sitting in a gathering when there are elders there, you should stay quiet. It's the best thing. Two Sahabi came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to inform him of a murder that occurred in Medina Munawwara. So when the two of them came, the young one started speaking. What did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say? He said, bring the elder forward. You were there, you're one of the witnesses, you saw the body, but you're not the one that's going to talk. Go to the back. The one that's older and senior in age, you come forward and talk. Tell me what happened. The adab that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us. Yes. Now then the question always comes in, the counter argument is, are we not supposed to empower our youth? And to that I always say the same thing. Of course we empower our youth. There's no question about that. There's a time and place for it. There's a time and place. Are we supposed to empower our youth by getting young 16, 17, 18-year-old amazing people, and I say amazing because as individuals they may be awesome, to deliver the Jummah khutbah when you have senior scholars maybe in the community or people of seniority? The answer is no. That's not what you're supposed to do. That's not empowerment. That's taking away from the seriousness of this minbar that we have. Everything has a place and time. There is a gathering, there is a place, there is an environment where you can promote the youth to be involved and prepare them to be leaders. And if we teach our youth to believe that until you don't speak, you are not being prepared for leadership and for the future, then we are setting them up for failure. Because not everyone will give them a podium. And a part of development and leadership is knowing that you have to work and lead sometimes without even saying a word in front of the mic. Are there people who lead the ummah forward without giving lectures? Without? Yes or no? Of course there are. Because leadership is here and here. Intellectually prepare them, spiritually prepare them. And these skills, these auxiliary skills need to exist. Knowing how to speak, knowing how to write, knowing how to engage, conversational skills, those can be developed with time. And it's not as if you need to start giving lectures when you're 18 years old. No, you don't need to. If there is a need, then you learn it at that time. Otherwise, learn how to serve the deen in other capacities. And when you're a young adult, someone's in their early 20s, you want to learn to speak, there are opportunities in our community that may not be as glamorous and glorious as speaking from the minbar of the Jami' Masjid of the community, but there are MSAs that need people to come and speak. Many of the students who say to me that, Shaykh, I'd like to learn to give Jummah khutbah, or I'd love to learn to practice my oratory skills, I always tell them, I'll find you a place. Most of the times, you know what places I send them to? Somewhere that's 1 hour away. I'll send them 1 hour away. Princeton, go to Princeton. Hour 15 minutes. Not the New Jersey Princeton. I'm talking about the Texas one. It's like God in the middle of nowhere. There's not even a highway that takes you there. And if they say, Shaykh, it's too far, then I say, you got your answer. You go back to doing other things in life. A part of this deen is for you, a part of the khidmah of the deen is for you to be okay with the sacrifice that's involved in serving the deen. It's a part of it. You have to wait for your opportunity. Wait for the time to come. Surround yourself by people who can see you and what's ahead of you. Yes, go ahead.
At times, a senior alim may not understand something, while a person who is junior to him may understand it.
That's another lesson. That sometimes the young can know more than the senior. Can that happen? Is that possible? Can a young person have more knowledge than someone that's older than them? Absolutely. It's the dua that hopefully every parent and teacher makes, that I hope that my students can do more khidmah than I am. I hope my child grows greater than I am. Say it, parents that are sitting here. Is that not the dua that we make for our kids? That I hope they go ahead of us. So sometimes even the student eclipses the teacher. Yes.
It is because knowledge is granted by Allah Ta'ala and He gives it to whom He wills. The proof which Imam Malik rahimahullah derived.
And the senior should not be jealous. They should be happy. You think Umar radiallahu anh got mad because his son knew the answer, he didn't know it? No. At the seminary, we study Mishkat al-Masabih, and in the introduction of that book, I say to the students all the time, Khatib Tabrizi was instructed to write the book by his teacher, Allama Tibi rahmatullahi alayhi. His teacher said to him that I need you to clean up the work of Baghawi. So he went and he cleaned it up and organized it and added referencing and all this stuff. Once the Mishkat al-Masabih was complete, then the teacher wrote a commentary on his students' work. How humble were these people? Allama Tibi rahmatullahi alayhi then writes a commentary on the Mishkat. La ilaha illallah. Go ahead.
The proof which Imam Malik rahimahullah derived from this hadith is that there is no harm in having such thoughts and feelings in the heart for which a person likes to be praised when he does any good. However, these thoughts need to be solely for Allah Ta'ala. This is proven from Umar radiallahu anhu's wish that his son should have said what he had understood and stated the correct answer which had occurred to him. The basis for Umar radiallahu anhu's wish was the human attribute to like good for oneself and one's children, and for the goodness of one's children to be exposed from a young age, and so that his son could gain closeness to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Yeah, he knew that if my son answered it, his intelligence would have been displayed in front of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam would have given my son extra attention. That this person gave a good answer. He's a young kid. This one's a bright one. Keep an eye on him. So Umar radiallahu anh desired that for his son. This is why he desired for his son to speak. This is why he told him to speak. He wanted him to speak. Yes.
He probably hoped that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would supplicate in favor of his son to gain additional.
That's another possibility, that when he was hoping that if his son answered, وَلَعَلَّهُ كَانَ يَرْجُ أَن يَدْعُوَ لَهُ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم, that if he had answered, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would have made a dua for him. Right? إِذْ ذَاكَ بِالْفَمِ كَمَا دَعَا صلى الله عليه وسلم لِعَبْدِ اللَّهِ بْنِ عَبَّاسِ رضي الله عنه. Just as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had made dua for Abdul ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. Yes.
Abdul ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu had brought the water of his own accord without Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam requesting him to do so.
Yeah, one day Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was somewhere and Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu presented water. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't tell him to bring water. He brought it on his own accord. Min tilqa'i nafsihi. So, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was so touched by this initiative of his that he said, Allahumma faqihhu fi ad-din wa 'allimhu at-ta'wil. Give him a deep understanding of the deen and teach him the interpretation of the Quran. And then we all know what happened to Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. These du'as hit him bullseye. Yes.
A person is extremely pleased when his son is correct or is inspired to do or say what is right. The insignificance of this world in the sight of Umar radiallahu anhu is apparent because he compared his son's understanding of a single matter to that of red camels as mentioned in another hadith, despite their great value and high price. It is not detestable for a child to say what he knows in the presence of his father, even if his father does not know it. This does not entail discourtesy to one's father.
It boils down to how you say it. If you say it in a demeaning way to your father, you're belittling them or your mother, that's wrong. This is why young people should be careful when teaching their parents. If you can say it in a loving, empowering way, go ahead. Your parents will make dua for you. But if you try to make them feel small, you're trying to flex how much you know, you use it as a refutation against your parents when they say something and you shoot back with the hadith right away, that's haram. Don't do this kind of stuff. Go ahead.
The humility and modesty which the Sahaba radiallahu anhum had in their presence of their elders and seniors, and how they remained silent in their presence is evident. The ulama say there is evidence in this hadith to show that an alim should distinguish between his companions by posing complex riddles and puzzles to them in order to test their intelligence in solving problems and clarifying difficulties. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to explain and compare various injunctions for the benefit of his Sahaba if procedures were confusing to them, or rules were difficult to comprehend. By using analogies and comparisons.
We'll stop here. Yeah, so this last part that he mentioned regarding al-ghaz, that a teacher can also use riddles to get the student to think that what's the solution. You've taught them something, and now you give them a riddle. There are so many examples of this. For example, the teacher says to the student, translate the following statement. Al-qamus fil qamus. What does that mean? Now to the average person, it means nothing. But to someone who has studied nahu or sarf before, or has studied language before, they'll know the answer to this riddle. So for example, Man qala Allah faqad kafar. Whoever said qala Allah faqad kafar. What's the answer to that? Again, it's a riddle. Those who know will know the riddle. But in order for you to undo that riddle, you have to have knowledge. So you need some training before you offer the riddle. You need some training before you offer the riddle. Yes. When we were in our, when we were doing our iftar program, our teacher once presented us with a scenario. He said, what's a scenario that a lady can get married 3 times in one day? So now you had to think of the answer. What's a scenario of how a lady can get married 3 times a guy can get married 3 times in one day. He doesn't have iddah. But what's the scenario that a lady can get married 3 times in one day? So now you have to go through the books and think of all the scenarios and all the situations. And for those of you that have studied fiqh before, you know how that works. Until you finally grind it through and say, oh, this is the exact scenario. This were to happen, 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 and all these circumstances were to line up exactly like this. This could be the outcome. I mean, it's obviously an impossible situation almost, but you guys understand. So these are al-ghaz that the teachers sometimes throw at their students to challenge them to think and to sharpen their skills. Okay, folks, with that we'll conclude here. We'll start with the next chapter if Allah wills in our next class. وصلى الله تعالى على سيدنا محمد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.